Hello, good morning, and welcome to Dialogue. This morning I'm sitting in for Tunde, and it's a fresh Monday morning here in London. I hope you're all feeling well and you're going to stay with us. Today we're going to have a very interesting conversation about property. It is now getting easier and easier to be able to obtain property in Nigeria without the usual stress, and we're going to be discussing the business opportunities and the doors that are being opened and the availability of things to do. So please stay with us. And my guest, our telephone number is 0208-808-0693. As you know, my guest is very ready to take the calls, and he's going to share his experiences with us, and it is a very, very interesting one. Now, my guest this morning is a very interesting character, a man that has what I describe as a very glorious history, career-wise. But then, you know, not too long ago, he decided to go to Nigeria. And upon arriving in Nigeria, he decided to contribute his quota to the well-being of Nigeria, as it were, and to also make a change. Let's meet him. He goes by the name of Mr. Adrian Ogu. He is the CEO of Adriano Properties. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Priscilla.
How are you?
Very well indeed.
Good to see you too. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Benti.
Well, you know, as I said there, you have a very glorious history. Let's start from your days as Mr. Accountant. Because you qualified as an accountant.
That's right.
You worked as an international accountant with Shell.
Yes.
You also worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers.
That's
you know,
right.
all the best places to be. Tell us a little bit about that, because you know you sort of. We're going to get to obviously where you're at today, but what happened?
I'll be very honest with you, Priscilla. That, you know, for many of us with a Nigerian heritage, living in the diaspora in the UK, our parents influence a lot of what we do.
Even when you live in Nigeria, I believe.
Even when you live in Nigeria. And my parents' desire was for me to follow one of the professions, which was as an accountant, to go to a particular, you know, I went to LSC and I went to Shell, and their desire was that I would transfer eventually to Nigeria with Shell. However,
you didn't think that was a good idea?
Well, I was dutiful. I actually did what
they asked you to do
until my late 20s, and then the desire to follow my heart came, and I got involved in a sports management business, which eventually was the mainstay of my career.
So how did you get into sports management?
As a hobby.
I know that you know the number crunching is easy for you, but how did you get into sports management?
It was a passion.
Okay.
And I went to a lot of sporting events. And obviously when I was younger, I had a little bit of prowess.
Okay.
So I met people like Daley Thompson, and I trained with him. I knew Frank Bruno from when he was very young, when he first started boxing. And these characters, I came on to at least influence their career at some state later, but as an agent.
Okay.
And I joined with a sports agency, and that business eventually floated on the AIM stock market here, which is when it was in the Financial Times that my father now realized what I was doing, wasting my time.
So you hadn't told him that you were no longer the accountant that had the best job with the best companies?
I think he was tolerating me. He was hoping that I might wake up one day and do what I was originally trained for. But when the company floated and he saw, you know, it was a success. I was very fortunate. We started a business, myself and my business partner at the time. We did sports agency, football, boxing, and some others, motor racing.
How was that for you? Because as a black man here in the United Kingdom, that's not something that, you know, it's easy to get into or to be able to rise to the height that you did. How did you find that experience?
To be honest, I was very fortunate. I met some really conscious black athletes.
Okay.
So Lennox Lewis, whom I managed for some time, for many years, along with Kelly Maloney, who is very conscious, and he really wanted a team that was aware of his cultural values.
Okay.
And Ian Wright as well. You know, I did shows with him, Friday Night's All Right, and those shows. Those were concepts that I put together with him,
really?
and we put them on. So these are people that are very conscious, and the company, SEM PLC, is still going today. But I left. And I went back to Nigeria a decade ago.
No, hold on, hold on. Let's take this one step at a time. You left, why?
I met a wonderful woman. I traveled to Nigeria. I did a lot of football deals in Nigeria. And I was picking athletes. I was taking them to South Africa, training the footballers. And on one of those visits, I met my future wife.
I see.
And it was life-changing.
Clearly, because you've just mentioned there that you left the company that was doing so well. You had all the best names in sports here in the UK as we know it at that time.
Yes.
And you abandoned it. You were a great success on TV, managing athletes and floating on the stock market, and a woman took you away?
Yeah, they're that powerful. Women are that powerful. To be honest, Lennox Lewis retired in 2004, and I was at his retirement ceremony. I was part of that decision with his mum, Violet, and his now wife, Violet Chang, who's now Violet Lewis. And as part of that decision, I felt that it was an era. I'd been with him for 10 years, and I'd met my wife as well, my future wife, and that year I got married to her.
Wow.
And she was really very much into working in Nigeria, not traveling abroad. And I'd always tried to buy property in Nigeria. I'd always tried to connect with Nigeria.
But you couldn't quite do that.
No, I'd had so many problems.
It was on the marriage. So, and all of this was in 2004, as you said, a decade ago.
Yeah.
So, you've always tried to buy properties in Nigeria and you couldn't. And you met this wonderful woman, and she wanted to be in Nigeria, work in Nigeria. She was happy to do that.
That's right.
And you were contemplating retirement just as much as Lennox was doing the same.
That's right. I will be honest with you. I had to adjust to a totally different environment, which I've now come to love.
Okay.
And as much as there are problems with infrastructure and political and others, there are great opportunities.
Yes, there are.
And as much as we have problems associated with lack of governance, we also have our people that are very collectivist, I call them.
Okay.
It's different to Western society.
Yes.
We look after our elderly. We don't put them in homes.
No.
We look after them, and we give them the same respect that they gave us as growing up. And to be honest, it's captured my heart.
Really?
The collectivism that is in Africa, this spirit of, I call it Ubantuism, which is...
Please break it down.
Which is a concept of interrelatedness, which comes out of South Africa, but it's applicable to a lot of us in Africa. We're more collectivist. We think about different parts of society, and we have compassion.
But, you've mentioned about the issues. You've said that although there were issues, there were problems.
Yes.
Tell us, what were some of those issues that you found?
Okay.
But for the love of the woman, you probably would have, said, I've had enough.
Okay.
What were some of those
Number
issues?
one.
Yes.
A lot of people implored me to come home, and when I came home, they were not there.
Where had they gone?
So I would, the initial warning is try and find something that you're motivated about, and a passion.
Okay.
And I had a passion. I tried to build a home in Nigeria. I'd sent money, and things didn't quite work out.
Okay,
and
so you were also a victim of the sending money home to relatives, and what did they do? They send you pictures of other people's homes?
No, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. These are relatives that knew the terrain. Okay. And they got duped themselves. Oh. So we were all duped.
Oh no.
So then when I arrived, I said, okay, I'm going to try and understand how to acquire good title to land.
Right.
I really want to build a home, and I want to build some other properties that I could rent out.
Okay.
And I was looking at building 10. And
No,
I've done.
no. Let's do this one at a time again, because you mentioned titles there. Often in Africa, and it's not unique to Nigeria, because
right.
I've heard others from Ghana, Kenya also speak of the same
Yes.
experience, where you buy a piece of property, a piece of land,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell you it's yours.
Yes.
But you later find out that somebody else actually owns the property to that
Yes,
land,
yes.
and therefore the person who sold it to you had no right to, or even if they had sold it to you genuinely, it turns out somebody else can just go and encroach on the land
Yes.
and just own it somehow, and it matters not what you do, the laws cannot help. So how did you get through that to be able to say, right, I want to get this right and do it the proper way?
You have to be determined, number one.
Okay, right.
You have to be someone that pays attention to detail,
All right.
yes, and you have to have a spirit that you will not be dominated.
Okay.
I'll be honest. So what I did in Abuja is that there was a great minister that came along around 2004 to 6, El Rufai,
Yes.
Minister El Rufai, and he was a disciplinarian, and he set up what's called the Abuja Geographical Information System, which captured all the titles, and he cleaned the titles up.
Okay.
So it's made it easier to find out who owns that title.
All right.
The second thing is that you have to, so you can go in, you can hire a lawyer from here on your behalf to go to what's called the AGIS, which is the Abuja Geographical Information System, and wait there. And within a day, they can bring you the history and ownership of that land as a piece of paper independently.
Really?
Well, apparently they say you can do it via the internet, but I always say to someone, just
go there yourself.
yeah, or get a local lawyer that you
Yeah.
can get from the Abuja Legal Society. You can look them up, and they have lists of lawyers there, so you know it's independent. And get them to go along, and then just pay them a little money to do that. It's very, very important. The second thing is that in the FCT, the police there are very good, and the actual Department of Development Control
Yeah.
is excellent.
Really?
So there are two things. You go to AGIS
Yes.
to check on the title, and then you go to the Department of Development Control with that document, and then you let them know that this is your land.
Okay.
Because if someone comes and encroaches on it, they will say, you mustn't do it yourself. They will send their own people, and if they persist, they will knock down their buildings. Because in development control, you have to have approval. So when you get your land, the first thing to do is apply to development control for approval to build on your land.
Oh, I
Send
see.
your plans, even if you're not ready to build right now. Once you do that and those plans are registered and approved by them, if anyone else comes and builds
On your land.
and they haven't got the approval because you've already registered your approval, development control will send in their bulldozers and knock it down. And they've done it. They've done it for me. I'm not.
Wow.
They've done it
This
for me.
is your personal experience?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so how long did it take you then? You got there in 2004. You started off. You've got to find out that AGIS is great. It works. Development control does exist and it works. And so how long then did it take you to be able to build your very first property?
It took a long time.
What is a long time?
6 years.
Well, okay, all right. It took him 6 years to build his first property. Break it down. What happened? I mean, was this all the learning process during that time?
My plans changed.
Okay.
Instead of building 10, I